we go again. It's another week of chiropractic and coffee. I will say the most dangerous part about our current location is that there's a Starbucks on the other side of our parking lot. And I do everything I can to not go there more than once or twice a week. But man, sometimes you get hit with that exhaustion. You're like, I just need some kind of caffeine. And yeah, I don't know. Maybe I need to be made of sterner stuff. I don't know. What do you guys think? Do you guys think I'm weak? Am I a weakling? Don't know. Am I not preaching what I'm teaching? Oh gosh, no. Anyway, since you're here and you're watching me have a panic attack, you guys want to talk about Reddit? Okay, guys, we're here again. So I was looking through stuff going on Reddit, and I saw one that I had to learn some stuff about. I don't actually entirely know what it is. It was one of those questions where it felt like there was another question kind of in the middle of it, so I thought it might be fun to maybe pry it open a tiny bit. But it begins with, did I screw up? Man, if I had a penny for every time I thought that, I wouldn't need to be a chiropractor anymore. My debt would be paid. My student loans would be gone by this point. It goes on to say, hey guys, so basically I have bad social anxiety and have a hard time saying no. I just had a first appointment at a chiropractor and was deciding how to pay for their wellness plan. I didn't want to pay it all up front, expensive, so I opted for the financing option using Care Credit. Is Care Credit a scam? I sort of just signed everything and I really wish I did my research beforehand. I also don't want to stick to the plan they laid out for me. I was just hoping to go a couple times and pay out of pocket for visits. I see now that's now what they do at that place. I think it's not at that place. If I decided to not go back there and cancel upcoming appointments, how would that affect my Care Credit balance or my credit? Would I just be able to cancel and get rid of my account? Please help. There's two kind of questions in here. The main on surface point of this question is, what is Care Credit? I had no idea what Care Credit was before I read this. I did a little bit of light research and I could very well be wrong. I don't take Care Credit and I've never seen it before today. If I say something that doesn't seem quite right, just know that I don't know fully, and I'm not going to make like huge sweeping statements or anything, but I did look into it and it looks like it's some kind of specific healthcare credit card, but it doesn't necessarily look like an HSA or an FSA, which are health. I'm going to explain what the abbreviation is, and just trust me, I'm going to do it. Which is a health savings account and a flexible savings account. Those can be used by patients, consumers, whoever. They usually get it from like a company healthcare plan, or sometimes healthcare plans get it, or they're specifically part of like some kind of deal bundle type thing that could be involved with your insurance, or it could be involved with your bank or something. There's like a million different things you could do for it. The HSA and the FSA, they are kind of the same thing. There's a little bit of difference on essentially if the money stays in the account after you have your yearly allowance, I guess might be the way to put it. It's kind of wildly complicated. Don't trust everything I say because there's probably stipulations, and it depends on the plans too for the HSAs and the FSAs. But just know that the FSA and the HSA, essentially when you boil it down to its key components, you get a card and they say you could spend $100 this year on healthcare stuff. And there's some tax implications on that, and there's actually a way to use those to get like stock and stuff like that. There's like things you could do with those cards that are way beyond what I'm going to talk about today. There's some advantages to it. There's a lot of good benefits to using it, because a lot of times it's just like free money if you think about like how the plans go, blah blah blah. So just make sure you do your research on it. Make sure you make an implied purchase. Be a researched consumer. Some of those are really good plans. Some of them are really helpful. Sometimes they're not. And you just kind of have to do a little bit of digging. I like FSAs and HSAs. They can be very, very helpful. They can save you a couple bucks, especially if you have a plan that just happens to give it to you. You could have an insurance plan where you pay $20 for copays or whatever, but it also gives you $100 to buy like exercise equipment or whatever. They'll have like specific things you can spend that money on, which can be really helpful for improving somebody's quality of life kind of stuff. I'm definitely not anti-FSA or HSAs or whatever. It does not look like Care Credit is one of those two things. Based on my very preliminary look at it, it does appear to be a credit card that is geared towards specifically paying for healthcare related stuff. I did my little digging. It didn't really necessarily give me any hard facts from what I could see on their website and a little bit of those stuff I looked around it. But it looks like it's a credit card that gives you benefits if you use it on healthcare stuff. So like if I were to get let's just say, I think it's called the Sapphire. The Sapphire card from Chase, that card specifically, I could spend it on whatever I want. But if you spend it on certain things, you get extra points. And then you get these points that specifically go to like travel, right? So it's a travel card, like miles. I'm sure people have heard of like having a card that gives you like aircraft or airplane miles. That's essentially what that card does. And so if it's similar to that, that would make sense to me. Do I know that for certain? No, I can't say for utmost certainty. And you might be wondering, why am I even talking about this if I don't actually fully understand the thing I'm talking about? That wasn't really the main point of what it is I want to talk about today, but I do think it's important to at least mention it. I would do some research on it. It looks like it could be something that's helpful, but I never take anything at a surface value. And I would definitely do a little bit of underground research. I would find people who are detractors of it to tell you what they think about it and see if they have any financial entanglements with things that want Care Credit to fail, right? I always like to look at both sides of the game, see where the money's going. Obviously, if you go to Care Credit's website, they're going to tell you it's the best thing ever and it's the best thing since sliced bread and blah, blah, blah. But if you go to somebody who is not financially obligated for its success, they're more than likely to give you a more neutral opinion. And if those opinions stay positive and they're helpful, then it might inform you that it's a good thing to have or to chase after or whatever. So the other question that I'm seeing in this question is, this person went to a chiro and there's the wellness plan and they don't want to pay for it because they feel like they only wanted to go there for a couple of visits and blah, blah, blah. I'm just going to come out and write and say that for someone to just jump into something and start signing their names on papers without fully looking at it and thinking about what it is that people are trying to do, like what is the healthcare, like did they not explain what the wellness plan was, blah, blah, blah. I think that was ill-advised. I'm just going to leave it at that. I might have some other more choice words to say, but that kind of stuff will get you in a lot of trouble because at that point you are living at the whim of others, which never ends well, right? And having social anxiety is one thing for sure, but having social anxiety should make you a little bit more, shall we say, concentrated on making sure you're not taken advantage of, shall we say. Now, am I going to say that this chiro was trying to take advantage of them? No. I don't have any details on what it is that the person went in for. Did they go in there with like low back pain? Did they go in there with neck pain? I don't know any of the mechanisms of injury. I don't know any of the details. It was purely just somebody coming on here saying, is this Care Credit thing a thing? So I can't say if the chiro did the right thing or the wrong thing or whatever, blah, blah, blah. They probably made a judgment call as best they could at the moment that they were in. The only side of the story I have is this person. Does that mean that the care plan was bad or it was done in bad faith? I can't say that for certain. So the real question here would be is why do they not find value in a potential wellness plan that got laid out? It depends on the chiro. If a chiro has a mandatory, you have to sign up for this however many visits because of whatever, blah, 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 that always puts the hair on the back of my neck go up a little bit, especially if they don't explain it. Now, if they explain it and they're like, we're going to do these kind of adjustments to help this get better, you have a condition or you have a whatever, or you have a particular kind of movement pattern that just doesn't help you. And if you get treated 3 times a week for a month or whatever it happens to be, you'll notice that that'll get better. And then if you do lower numbers of visits after that, you'll notice that it maintains at a much higher level and it may never come back, blah, 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 and we'll rehab it, blah. So there's a lot of that kind of stuff going on, right? So going to the internet and just being like, hey, there's this thing that I don't like, I'm panicking, what do I do? There's a lot of factors here that it's hard to say. But if the chiro is laying out a plan, there might be a reason for it. And this brings up a very important aspect of the doctor-patient relationship. So if the chiro or the doctor, and this could even be for like MDs. MDs don't necessarily have like treatment plans per se, and that you have to come in like multiple times a week or whatever, blah, blah, blah. That kind of, like chemo, stuff like that, obviously. But like if you're just going to like your regular PCP, generally speaking, they don't see you like more than once a week unless something's really going wrong, right? In which case they're probably got other things they got to worry about than a payment plan. But if you're going to the chiro and they lay out this plan and they say, if you do this, you'll get some kind of benefit for it, great. If the person doesn't see the value in that, they should, one, vocalize that at the beginning. And if they don't want to get entangled, I guess, in a long-term treatment plan like this, then the first thing I would say is if that person was for me, and it's definitely happened where people say like, oh, I don't want to come in that very many times, blah, blah, I only am here for, a couple of days, I want to go vacation or whatever. That stuff happens all the time. My first question would be is, okay, well, how many times can you come in? What can we do in that amount of time? And then these are the things that you have to make sure that you do while you're not here. And I think that if you're able to more detail-orientatedly tell somebody, hey, these are the things that we're trying to do. If you do this kind of stretch, it might make up for the amount of time, like if you're going like on a week-long vacation or whatever. If you do these things while you're gone, it may not get better, but it won't get any worse. Or it may get slowly better with time, right? And I will say a lot of people come to see me the day before they leave for Europe or whatever. It'll be their very first visit. They come in and they expect me to just wham, bam, thank you, ma'am, get rid of this low back pain that's been bothering them for 6 years. And it just got worse right before they were about to leave because they rushed and packed and all this other stuff and blah, blah. And there's a lot of socio stuff going on that one that go well beyond the purview of this question. But I'll just say that if you expect it to go away completely, depending on the thing. Generally speaking, most things that people go to chiros for are deeply ingrained in there from years of some kind of movement that they don't agree with. Their nervous system has altered in some way. There's been interference somewhere along the spinal column, blah, blah, whatever, muscle, fascia, whatever it happens to be. And that's going to stop you from being able to function properly. Pain is just trying to tell you that something's finally getting to the point where it can't handle it anymore, right? And people always want to wait until the last minute to take care of that pain. Understandably so, because that's how people are kind of like sort of taught about their health if they're only focused on like what they call the allopathic method of like, okay, we seek healthcare to remove pain as opposed to, oh, I seek healthcare and wellness care to go beyond pain and to make the things that we already have do much better, right? That's the more like holistic approach, the more like full body approach. And so if you only have an allopathic type of approach to these things, it could really taint your view of what it is that you're trying to do. And I will say more often than not, and I say taint like it's bad. It's not necessarily, like avoiding pain is not a bad thing, right? If that's your goal in life is to just kind of avoid pain and get through your life as happy as you possibly can and you don't want to spend any money on that kind of stuff because you don't find value in it, there's nothing wrong with that. That's completely up to you. That's your prerogative. When it comes to chiro, our goal here is to get you kind of beyond that. And it sounds like that this chiro might be trying to help in that regard. And I find that in the years of me doing this, what tends to happen is if you offer up a number of visits at the very beginning, I always offer a pretty solid discount. I like to call it the foot in the door approach, where somebody comes in and they say, hey, I have this really bad pain, blah, blah, blah. What do I do? How much is this going to cost? Let's lay it out, right? So I say, let's do 12 visits. Boom. However much that comes to. I'm not gonna date myself. I might, like, in case prices change or whatever in the future or whatever. But if they come in, I'm going to say, here's how much it's going to cost with the exam, the visits, the re-exams, and all the other stuff that we're going to do, because I do, like, some light rehab here and stuff like that, and usually I got to pay for that because it's very time-consuming. I'll add all that up, and I'll say, I'll give you 10% off if you just pay for it all now. You're probably going to have to pay it anyway. I might as well just have you not have to pay as much, and you get your foot in the door, because now people they tend to have a skin in the game. And depending on your interpretation of that, it could really taint your view of like what it is that the chiro's trying to do. My goal is to make it so that you are going to get through the full care thing so that you can get better. The other person, the patient that doesn't necessarily believe in that, they might think, oh, this person's trying to take advantage of me and they're trying to like get as much money in me or whatever, right? Which I think is a totally reasonable reaction. So I think at that point, it's up to the chiro to establish why it is that it's beneficial for whatever it is that they're saying that the patient should do in regards to that care plan. I forgot to turn that stupid thing on again. Here, let me see if I can get that magic trick to work again. Look at that. Magic. Yet again. Turning on lights with my fingers. That's how magic I am. But anyway, yeah, so I do think that it's a genuine concern. I think that people are worried about that they don't understand what it is that they're paying for. And I think that it's important for the chiro to establish why that is important, right? Care plans can be very, very powerful for people who need that extra amount of like skin in the game to like force them to come in. I don't want to say force them. That's not a great way to put it. But it gives them the impression that it's important to keep coming to fully finish the care plan, because there's a lot of times some things just take a little bit of extra time to heal. And then there's a lot of, I call it like aftercare. It's probably not a great way to put it. But after you get better, you have to keep adjusting something and treating something in a way to where the neural pathways that go into that area that you're trying to rehabilitate or to fix or just to let the body heal. You have to remember that pain is the last thing to appear and the first thing to leave. So if you have that established problem that's lingering, it's important that you make sure you keep adjusting it in order for it to go to its most optimal situation. And that's why it seems kind of counterproductive to go to a chiro when there's not necessarily pain. Because again, if you only focus on it from an allopathic standpoint, and I should probably put a definition of what allopathic means up here, like what it means like from a definition standpoint. But you have to remember that not everything should be determined by pain. And there's definitely a case of wellness and how it is that you feel not related to pain in the slightest. And that's mostly what we're focused on. And that's the deeper place that you can get to with chiro. It's a lot easier to do that when you're more focused on that healing aspect of it as opposed to only just trying to get rid of pain. But that's my personal opinion. That's what a chiro would say. Okay, first comment. Contacting the office and explain what you've explained here seems like the first step. If that doesn't get the resolution you want, too many variables exist for the internet to be much help. Yeah, I think I alluded to that earlier. Yeah, there's just a lot of like things that we don't know. You have to know exactly why is it that the chiro is recommending it. Like, is this person have factors that might make recovery take a little bit longer? There's just a lot of things that don't necessarily have a very good answer just based on like the simplicity of the question, which is obviously beyond the scope of what it is that the person was trying to ask. So obviously I don't think anybody's to blame for that one, but it is something that is important to kind of think about in regards to why is that the chiro did what they did. I don't think it's ever a fair thing to assume that somebody's doing something purely for the worst reasons. I mean, I'm sure there are people that do that for sure. I try to give people the benefit of the doubt. Maybe it's my optimism poking through. I apologize. But yeah, I always find communication to be the very first step to getting a resolution that everybody seems to like, especially if you are hoping that they're there to help you, right? So if you contact them and they're maybe not hostile, but maybe a little bit more like antagonistic to you, that might mean that they have kind of like other goals in mind, which I would say do your best to try to avoid that in the future. But maybe even if you did pay for it, you might as well use it, especially if you can't get a refund for it. Use it, see if you feel better. Maybe the anxiety it was not founded. Maybe it is that the person that you went to had your best interest in mind, blah, blah, blah. But if you pay for it, you might as well use it, right? And if they can't give you the money back in any way, I'm not entirely sure how that works with this particular credit card thing. Again, it's that care credit thing. I don't know exactly how it works. From what I've seen, I haven't seen anybody say it's bad. I think it's worth at least looking into. Maybe I'll look into it a little bit myself. Who knows? And the second comment, the thing is, I always take a picture of the question before I give it an upvote. Listen, I'm a responsible Reddit user. Make sure you upvote people that deserve it. Okay, you want to give them that karma. That's how the Reddit prestige works. You got to give them credit where it's due. Care credit is not a scam. My question would be, what are they doing for this plan? I work for the Joint, and we will be taking care credit soon. We do offer the option of people buying a year, but most stick to the monthly option or one of the packages. You should be able to cancel it and get the money refunded through care credit. I use it for my son's wisdom teeth and occasionally for larger vet bills. Shouldn't affect your credit at all. I hate these kinds of places that push you to do this type of thing. I would try someone else and tell them you're interested in a trial of care. Yeah, again, a lot of that kind of echoes what I'm saying. It's good to hear that they don't think care credit's a scam. The Joint is interesting. That's a whole nother thing I think I would want to talk about. I'm not necessarily anti-Joint, but the Joint is definitely not pure chiropractic, in my opinion. I think they're cool. I think it's cool that they exist. I think it's a good way for chiropractic to kind of get its word of mouth out there. I don't know if that's the right way, but to get some like publicity, some good publicity. I don't think Joints are bad things at all, for sure. But it's interesting. It's interesting that he's coming at it from the joint perspective, which is kind of neat. And I agree. Yeah, I think a lot of it has to do with like what is it that the chiro is recommending. If it's an unfounded care plan, then you start having the eyebrows go up. You're like, okay, that's kind of weird. Yeah, and like I said, I'm not a huge fan. Like when we offer it here, I don't force people to buy it. I'm always just like, if you're interested, like we know that it's probably going to take this amount of time. I'm just going to offer you a discount because I mean, I'm aware that it costs money, right? I'm aware that it's not always the cheapest thing to pay for like 12 visits when they're like, however much a pop. And if I can offer a little bit of a discount, then sure. And if somebody has problems paying for even that, one of the cool things about being a non-insurance taker is that we can work with you. If you're like, hey, I can't pay it because I haven't been working because I've been paying and blah, blah, blah. Well, then let's work something out. Like, let's just say you pay this much and, maybe you pay us later or maybe you pay us in baked goods, whatever. That's one of the great things about being able to determine your own care plan and what it is exactly that we're trying to do and not being dictated by things like insurance premiums and payments and stuff like that. Again, not a huge fan of insurance companies. I wish they would stop. I wish they would knock it off. But, that's not, we're not going to solve that problem in a Reddit post. And then the OP actually responded to that particular message and said, awesome, that makes me feel a lot better. Their plan is for me to come in a couple times and a week for the first 3 weeks, and then just once a week for the next 6 or so weeks. It was originally double the number of appointments. I don't feel I need to be seen that often, so I'll probably call and ask to cancel those appointments. Thanks. Couple times a week for the first 3 weeks, and then once a week for the next 6 weeks or so. That's not too off of the basis of what I would recommend, especially if somebody came in with like something that really needed like attention. This is my general rule of thumb, and this is not by any means hard guidelines. I think every chiro has different impressions for these kinds of things. If somebody's in an acute amount of pain, like as in they just fell and they really hurt themselves, or they're having some real bad sciatica and they're not able to move, that's a 3 times a weeker. 3 times a week is when you get the biggest change, because they come in, you constantly put the thing back into where it's supposed to be. It lets the body heal at the most optimal rate, and it also helps to just reduce the inflammation in there and keep the space there so that the person's able to move and at least function on some level. 3 times a week is big boy. That's when you pull out the big guns, right? That's when somebody's suffering some serious pain and you're trying to get them out of it for them to be able to return back to doing things at home. 2 times a week is for what I like to call like those kind of chronic problems where they've just been doing something and they've had this like pain in their leg for however many years because it never fully healed after they fell or suffered like a football injury or whatever. 2 times a week is how much it takes for you to kind of start getting on top of something. I like to think of it as like kind of like edging away on something. You just start rubbing away and you eventually manage to break it down. And as soon as you get it back into its like most base components where it's like, okay, we got your low back moving better now. We need you to start doing glute exercises. That's when I'd be like, okay, let's do once a week for however many weeks. I think I've mentioned before in some videos that I like everything. I like 4-week periods is kind of I find to really kind of notice change, because what always tends to happen is the first week, there's not like a ton of change. Second week, they're like, wow, I feel way better. End of the third week, they're like, wow, I'm way back to exactly where I started. And then by the end of the fourth week, they're like, wow, I'm way better again. Because, broad sweeping statement, when people get to the end of the third week, they tend to start going to do things that they were having problems doing before they were in, or when they were still in pain, before they started feeling better. So then they start go out doing all that stuff, and then all of a sudden their body's like, whoa, cowboy, we need to slow down here a tiny bit. And then that's when you bump into that kind of problem. So after the fourth week, they tend to be like, oh, wait, I'm back to where I was before. And then at that point, it's a lot easier to be like, okay, your knee was moving incorrectly because of a tight calf, or because you have weak intrinsic muscles of the foot, or whatever it happens to be. Go work on those when you're not here. Let's treat it. You come in once a week just to make sure everything stays in the place where it's supposed to. You're probably going to get achy from working out things that haven't worked out for a while. And then at that point, we kind of play it by ear. And then I play the pressure gauge game, which is after you come in for, like, let's just say once a week for 4 weeks, we find the pressure gauge as in, okay, come in 2 weeks. You think that's good? Do you think that was the right amount of time? Did you feel like you were ready to come back? Okay, good. Let's do 3 weeks. You want to do 3 weeks? So let's do a month. Don't like to go more than a month just because it starts to go into the realm of the injury healing rate gets a little bit too difficult to keep up with once a month. At which point, you also say you also have me on retainer. Just give us a call if you ever need anything, if you fall or hurt yourself, or you do a lot of extra gardening or whatever it happens to be. And just come on in and we'll fix it up and blah, blah, blah at that point. So you kind of become a little bit of a retainer on that, in that regard, which I like. That's my favorite place to be, quite honestly. We'll do one more for this one. I agree that the plan does sound pretty reasonable compared to others I've read or I've heard about. However, you are the customer and it doesn't feel right for you. It's not right for you. You can always start with a trial and see how it goes. There's an office near me that pushes 6 and 12-month plans. I get patients who have dropped out of those plans frequently. They never had any issue getting out of the contract. I don't know how or if Care Credit complicates the issue. The contract you signed should clearly state how to get out. You should have been given a copy. You can always request another copy if you need. Again, ultimately, it comes down to patient preference. If you ever feel like you're being held against your will, that's not good. That is definitely a predatory approach to business, which is not good for business, one. And two, it makes you feel scummy. So if you're a scummy business person and you feel like you're being scammed or you feel like it's a scummy business situation, just do your best to get out of it. Maybe you lose a couple bucks from it, but at least you know that you're not going to lose any more in the long run. Try and get what you can out of it. I agree, the contract should specifically state, and you don't want to have to take it legally, but I guarantee you if you're just like, listen, don't make me do something here, like just give me my money back or whatever. A lot of times I think these businesses will back down and be able to give you what it is they want. There's going to obviously be exceptions to this. I'm not a lawyer by any means. Just make sure you read the contract before you do anything big. Keep that in mind. And yeah, I agree. If they're not willing to, like, because even here, what I'll do is if they don't want to pay for our plan thing and they want to have a couple visits first to see if it helps, I'm like, that's great. That's a great way to do it. Let's do a couple visits or whatever. And if you decide that you do want to do the bundle, as we like to call it here, if you decide that you do want it because you're getting benefit out of this, we'll just retroactive it and we'll make the next visits cheaper or whatever to kind of counteract however much is that you did pay. Like I said, any good chiro is going to work with you on it, I think, at least, respectfully, of course. Whether you agree with their treatment plan or not, like I said, it kind of depends on a lot of factors that are hard to extrapolate from just a random Reddit message, but just kind of keep that in mind. If it seems like a lot of visits, ask them why. If they can't explain why, or something about it just seems kind of fishy, then make a good educated decision, but do your best to be educated, right? You know, do your own little research, maybe even get a second opinion kind of thing, and just do what feels right. And if it feels like somebody's trying to take advantage of you, at least keep your eyes open for it, because we don't want you to get taken advantage of. That's not good. Let's go to the next question. Yeah, this one was good. I think this one had 2 different questions in it, which I thought were both fairly interesting. Okay, here we go. We're in our back pain. We're living in the world of back pain. Here we go. Finally healed my disc herniation. Here's what I did. Okay, so I herniated my disc in April 2025. That's about a year from the time of recording. And sent me into a depression because I couldn't move around as I wanted to, even just live normally, because I was in pain all the time. Going to class was nearly impossible, and I would lose focus after like 5 minutes due to pain. So just as a quick aside, if he's going to class and all that, it's, I don't know if safe to assume, but it's probably okay to assume that this person's probably a little bit younger, as opposed to somebody who's like in their 50s or 60s or something, which is important to know, especially when it comes to disc herniations, which we'll get into in a second. Please keep in mind, this is not medical advice by any means, just a personal story of what I did. I'm assuming, changed their routine. Started out with the low back ability program, which can be found online. Did not really decrease my pain after about 3 months. However, I could do more at the same pain level. That's good. Watched back injuries with Mac Ward and started squatting and deadlifting with very light weight twice a week. This was scary at first, but I realized it did not flare me up as much as I thought it would. Could be due to supplements I was taking. Average of 10,000 steps daily every week and hydrate with electrolytes. Good. Supplements. HGH2 Forius. Yes, human growth hormone helped me a lot with sleep and recovery. For the first time in months, I slept like a rock and woke up feeling rested. Localized BPC 157 injection, 600 MCG daily post-workout. Fish oil, 50% more than recommended dose. 14K IUS vitamin D plus K2. Oh, I believe that IUS is supposed to be in international units, I believe is what that's supposed to be. Zinc, ashwagandha, and magnesium glycinate. Try to keep it short and sweet. Ask questions if you need. Yeah, okay, so I read this one a little bit before I actually decided to post it in this. There's a couple of things in there I'm probably not going to touch because I don't necessarily know if they're beneficial or not. That's going to be the human growth hormone and the injection, the BPC. I'm not entirely sure what BPC is. I'm not even going to look it up because I'm not ever going to recommend anybody inject anything into them. If that helped this person out, great. If it's a post-workout thing, then you're probably, hopefully, a little bit more educated on that stuff. I would never recommend that quite to the extent of having people inject things into them. I think most of the time you could get it through food and or supplements, especially if you have no absorption factors, which is definitely something that is good to keep in mind. If, like, let's just say you just take a ton of, let's just say magnesium or whatever it happens to be, and you're constantly taking it, but you never feel like you have enough, it might be prudent to check to see if your body can even absorb magnesium, which could be the reason why you're not getting enough of it, even with you, going through the motions of taking it, right? If that makes any sense. All the routine stuff, fantastic stuff. I would say definitely doing low back ability stuff, just working out, deadlifts and squatting are absolutely fantastic low back exercises if they're done well. You don't have to do heavy weight. Again, I think the movement itself is enough to strengthen the area to the degree of where you could probably just function. That's absolutely fantastic stuff. I love that. And an average of 10,000 steps daily every week. And hydrate with electrolytes. Yeah, electrolytes are good. It makes it so you don't cramp up. It makes it so your muscles don't get super tight. Yeah, I would definitely say 10,000 steps is really good. I think the benefit of walking for humans all the way up to 8,000 to 8 steps. Hopefully you get more than 8 steps, even if you're not very mobile. 10,000 steps is really, really good. 8,000 steps, I believe, is about the point where the peak, like the biggest bang for your buck happens for humans when in regards to their stepping. 8, and then I think it's everything past like 10 or 12, I think. The benefits of it start to taper off in a way where I think once you get to like 15,000, you're not really getting a whole lot of benefit out of it. So yeah, I would say 8,000 steps would definitely be about where I tell my patients that they need to walk. And I think that is thought of as dedicated walking, in that some of that should definitely be, I am up on my feet and I'm tightening my core while I'm walking, and I'm walking in a straight line in a way where I'm getting core strengthening steps, if that makes it. That may not make a lot of sense. If you engage your core while you're walking, it's a lot better for the low back because you're also training your core. What does that mean? Like I said, just tighten your stomach as tight as you can while you're walking. And I find that'll be pretty helpful, right? So just moving in general, again, the routine is move and do exercises that help you. Like, we're not really like blowing any, we're not blowing science out of the water with this one. We know that stuff helps. Go ahead and do it. If you do an exercise and you notice that it bothers you, don't do that exercise. Maybe try to find a way to modify it, or at least look at your form in a way to prevent any further injury from happening. I think it's really important. Just keep your eyes on that. But definitely get some steps. Definitely do some low back exercises. Doesn't involve weights at all, or very little weight, just to get the benefits of doing that exercise, right? And so the 14,000 IUs of vitamin D and vitamin K, I'm not entirely sure 14,000 is necessarily what I'd recommend. They say that you're supposed to get about 5,000 IUs of vitamin D a day, roughly speaking. Based on Massachusetts, and this is obviously going to have a lot to do with where you're located, but up here in Massachusetts, it's actually physically impossible to get enough vitamin D purely from the sun because of the angle of the earth. This is something that you probably want to do a quick Google on and say, like, where is it that you are in the world? Wherever it is, if you're outside and just doing general outside stuff, is it going to be enough for you to get enough vitamin D? They say you get enough vitamin D once your skin feels toast. So if you ever get to where you're standing outside and you feel like your skin doesn't necessarily turn red, like you don't want to get sunburned, but like if you were to go outside and then come back inside and you like were to touch your skin and it feels warm, they say that is the point where you're absorbing enough vitamin D for your daily intake. Obviously, again, there's a lot of factors for that. Cloud coverage, the actual melatonin content of your skin. So people who are from more of an African descent, where they have a much darker skin tone, they take a lot more sunlight to get enough vitamin D. So they might want to supplement it. So if somebody up here is in the Northeast United States, at least, I would definitely say if you're dark skinned, you definitely want to be supplementing vitamin D just because of the benefits of it. It's very far reaching, lowers all cause mortality. Vitamin D is super important. It's one of the 2 supplements I think everybody should make sure that they're at least on to get enough of it for their daily RDAs. I think vitamin D is just absolutely fantastic. You can actually superdose it, which means you could take enough of it for a month in a single day because it'll just float around in your blood, because there's a difference between D3 and D4. I think of the 2, I think it's D3, D4. Really, really important. Vitamin D is definitely the one I would recommend people make sure they get. It being in combination with vitamin K, I think it depends on the formula. I don't think vitamin K is necessarily something that people are like horrendously short in. And vitamin K, you also want to make sure that you're aware of what medications you're taking taking, because those can contribute to issues with blood thinnery type clotting agents. So just make sure that whatever medications you're on are not recommending you just stay off of vitamin K. So vitamin K is one of those things you just want to make sure you're taking aware of based on what you're taking. Like I said, it's probably like 99% of the time you're probably going to be fine. You just want to make sure you don't mess up for that one. So just make sure you check. Zinc, super important. It is a very important cofactor for a lot of different functions in the body. Males especially need a lot of zinc because we tend to use it in male fun time, shall we call it, just to be appropriate completely. It's something that we use a lot of in regards to our fluid formation, which is very important for us. And zinc also helps contribute to muscle relaxation, that kind of stuff. It's also very, very important for immune system. So everybody needs it for immune system. So I always recommend a good zinc if you're just feeling kind of tired or you feel like you're constantly getting sick all the time. Zinc is one of the ones where I have actual trouble like taking it. I find that the pill versions of it don't bother me so much, but if I do a liquid version of zinc, I throw it up every single time. I don't know why. I've tried it with and without food just to see if there was a difference. I think there's just something about my body not liking the liquid version of it, and I think it views it as a foreign substance. So it's like, okay, we're not taking any of that. We got to get that the heck out of here. And then I puke it up. It's not great. I don't recommend it. So if you are looking to get zinc, just make sure you find a version of it that you like. I doubt that that's a very common thing for everybody. That just happens to be me. Ashwagandha, I believe, is another. It's a herb. I'm pretty sure, ashwagandha, and that is again, I feel like that's mostly for immune system. I think it's immune system. It has a lot to do with, I want to say like it's mental stress. It's like stressors and stuff like that. And brain, I think it has something to do with nerves too. I'll probably put something up here, obviously, but it's obviously an important like supporting herb. It's you might even be able to get it in teas. I'm not entirely sure. I'm not sure if they put ashwagandha in tea, but it's something that you could use to probably lower inflammation. Is probably the base component of what it is with ashwagandha that is helpful, right? And then of course the very last one, piece de resistance. Who doesn't love a good magnesium? Magnesium glycinate citrate are the two that I think you should always be taking. Take it. It's really good. Make sure you get the right amount. It's generally about 250 to 550 milligrams per day, but make sure you check with your MDs or get evaluated beforehand, because if you take too much of it too fast, you might have a bit of a diarrhea episode, because it is something that your body uses to relax your lower half, the exit tube, shall we say. And if you take too much of it too fast, your body is very hypersensitive to it, and when it hits your intestinal muscles, it will have a reaction. So just make sure you start, if you think you're just super low on the magnesium, start at the low end, start at the 250, work your way up. After about a week of taking 250, you can move up to maybe like, let's just say like 300, 350, whatever, or maybe just a tiny bit more powder or whatever it is you want to try and do, and then work your way up to about 550. Everything past that, again, it kind of depends on the person. You might be a little bit more sensitive to it than others, but it is a really, really good way to lose muscle tension, especially at night, and it also helps you relax. It helps you with like mental stressors. It helps you with just like anxiety type stuff. First comment: while you were squatting and deathlifting. Oh my gosh. That sounds metal. Deathlifting? Oh my god. That sounds awesome. Anyway, sorry. Well, while you were squatting and deadlifting, did you find any other exercises for hypertrophy? How far did low back ability help you with this journey? The only reason I put that in there is because he does respond to it, and he responds with deathlifting. That sounds awesome. Deathlifting. LBA helped me reactivate my left glute. Literally could barely feel it during any exercises and reduce pain. Baseline, I would say if all your muscles are activating, you're ready to squat, deadlift very lightly. And yeah, I did other exercise for every other muscle group, but I started very light. Yeah, and honestly, like, I think a lot of people think when you go to the gym to work out, you have to lift super heavy. No, you don't. Even just sometimes doing the exercise, the movements themselves are enough for your body to get the picture, to reduce the amount of like things that cause us pain. Because when we're in pain, you got to remember, like, our body's at the limit of where it thinks it shouldn't be. If you're starting to feel pain, it's because it's in a position that it didn't want to be in the first place. And it wants to go back like 10 bus stops back to like where it was like way before the pain. So I will say just doing the movement in general is usually enough to get you out of the majority of your problems. LBA, like I said, I don't know what necessarily that is, something human growth hormone or factor or whatever. I don't know if I'm going to tell anybody to take that. That would be something I would try on myself before I tried on anybody else. But I will say if you are having issues with weakness in one side of your muscles, like if you're compared to your left and right, if one side of your body is having trouble doing specific kinds of movements and exercises, it's a good indication that you might want to do some unilateral exercises. So if you're having problems with a glute, maybe you do some specific like one-legged squats, like a split squat or a Hungarian, Bulgarian, whatever. I think I did this earlier in another episode where it's actually like technically both. The Hungarian split squat, it's a really, really good way to work out one side without using the other one to like try and compensate for it. And you could always do like one-legged squats too.
As opposed to like a split squat, you could just actually like go down as low as you can on one leg and then push yourself back up. Even like a leg press, if you just use one leg, just make sure you lower the weights, obviously. Anything that would make it so that you are not able to use one side to compensate for the other. Really get that side joined back in. And then I always recommend a good balance board session. If you ever feel like muscles are not working evenly on both sides, standing on a balance board is a really good way to get the not working, the failing muscle. I'm gonna say failing, that seems kind of harsh, muscle to kind of get back into the picture. And if you stand on it, I always recommend about 8 minutes. After you stand on it for about a minute or two, if you have a muscle that's just not doing its part, it'll really start to get tired. Because on a balance board, if you're balancing evenly, it has to work. Otherwise, you would not be able to stand up balanced, right? And if you notice it in your glute, that's a really good clue that you need to work that area out. Standing on a balance board might be a really good way for you to exercise it lightly before you start doing something like a squat or, you know, even goblet squats or whatever, right? Alrighty, and then this is the last one. I'm going to read the comment above it because this is a reply from the OP. Congrats, you're back to normal and pain-free. You're back to normal and pain-free. Okay, you're like, you're back, not as in like you're back, like the noun as opposed to the verb. Yeah, for the most, and then he replies with, yeah, for the most part, I will feel a slight burn if I work for 12 plus hours, but other than that, I have a very normal life outside of the gym. The only time when I realize I still have work to do is when I squat and deadlift. So I will say, if I were to work for 12 hours a day, my back would probably be freaking out. I think this is one of those, you got to know your limitations type things. I think some people expect themselves to be able to do way more than they should be able to without pain. If you think you can work 12 hours consistently, no matter what your job is, whether it's physical or not, even if you're sitting on your butt for 12 hours, something's going to break. Humans are not designed to work 12 hours a day. End of sentence. Like, some people can do it, but I guarantee you there's going to be a cost along the way. Don't say it won't be, that you're crazy if you think you could work that much and not have some kind of like minimal back pain, right? And he says that he still feels that, I say he, again, this might be a she. I didn't see anything that indicated either way. But if you're at the gym and you still notice that you're having squat and deadlift issues, I have been working out pretty consistently for very many years, and I hate leg day. I always notice that my squats and deadlifts and my lunges and all that are pathetic compared to most of my other exercises. I just kind of have weak legs. I've just come to accept that, which is why when I do the exercises, I mostly just do it to get the movement, not necessarily blow a PR out. And I just want to make sure that I have a nice steady low back to stop any low back pain, right? And I stretch my hamstrings out quite a bit just because for some reason my hamstrings are just kind of tight all the time. But that's just life. But there you go. There's 2 questions. Bada boom, bada bing. That's another week down. Thank you guys for joining me. I hope you guys are having an absolutely wonderful week. I hope you guys keep having a wonderful week. I'll see you next week. Hope you keep it popping out there. And I just hope you have an absolutely lovely time. I'll talk to you guys later.